Hello, Emma.
Hi, Chris.
Hiya. It's really good to speak to you. I know we've been exchanging emails back and forth, and I've seen you do other interviews as well on other podcasts. Your story really interested me in many ways. Um, can you just explain basically what happened with you? Because I know it involves, well, you've posted a video up about it, which when you showed me was a bit disturbing regarding the police and whatnot. But before we actually get to that point, let's start at the beginning. So, what was your journey from to get to this point where you are at the moment?
It's been yeah, it's been quite a long one. I suppose I'll start with lockdown and lots of strange things happening that didn't really add up or make any sense to me. But the most alarming part of it for me was what we were subjecting the children to, and
Yeah.
things that we knew were not right were now all of a sudden what we were expecting children to do, like keep away from other children and wear masks and things like that. So lots of things like that that I took issue with. So my eldest was about to start at secondary school, and I was already at that point starting to feel like I wanted to home educate. But she wanted to go to secondary school with her friends, so she did, and I decided to become a teaching assistant at the same school so that I could be able to see what was going on and what the children were being taught and that sort of thing. Which then led to making lots of observations with regard to the digital technology side of schools and the biometrics that were taken and digital grooming, that sort of reliance on ed tech as the new normal, and that movement towards digital IDs really for children. And obviously gender ideology was creeping in as well, and I was starting to become aware of those things that were being taught. You can be a boy, girl, or neither.
Mhm.
And our youngest was at primary school, and she was being taught gender ideology. So I started down that path. At the secondary school, there was lots of confusion over teachers were not sure if they could refer to children as boys or girls, or if they need to be careful of how they, which pronouns they use and things like that, and boys identifying into the girls' toilets. So ultimately, we decided after a year, we decided to home educate. So we deregistered and we began home education, which prompted me to ask David Lloyd's Leisure if they were similarly confused as to who can enter the female changing rooms. And it turned out that they were also operating on a self identification policy without telling anyone. So obviously the adverts directed at families. It's a family friendly health club, um, and allowing men to get changed with my daughters in the female changing room is a million miles away from family friendly in my book. So I'm now pursuing legal action against David Lloyd's Leisure for discrimination on account of my sex and gender critical beliefs. So that's the David Lloyd's thing.
Yeah.
At this point, our youngest daughter had finished primary school, and I was still in contact with the school, trying to warn them that they should not be teaching gender ideology to children, and the risks associated with that. Um, and then she started secondary school again. She wanted to experience secondary school with her friends, and I thought that I'd be able to keep a close eye on things. However, within 3 months of starting secondary school, she came home with a library book, which I don't know if you've seen the library book, Chris, or I've
No,
put
no.
posts on. But it's called Loveless by Alice Oseman, who has a very popular Netflix series called Heartstopper, which is very popular amongst young teenage girls, and is set in a high school. but she also writes these other books that's aimed at slightly older children, young adults, and this book in particular includes highly sexual, graphic content, um, and the idea behind the book is if you're not into exploring your sexuality, then it's possible that you might be asexual and therefore part of the LGBTQIA community. And at the back of the book, there are links to online forums where children can talk to strangers online about their sexuality.
Okay. It's
Um, so I've been obviously into school to discuss the book, and I asked if they wanted me to read a paragraph from the book, which they declined. Um, it's apparent that there's a whole genre of LGBTQ books that are being brought into secondary schools, um, and nobody's reading them. They're just getting brought in straight into the library without any checks, any risk assessments, and the content in these books is very very sexually graphic content that there's no place for it in an education setting, let alone for children. So we now home educate both the children.
okay. There's a
Um,
lot to digest there. Gosh,
yeah,
okay. We'll start with the gym
yes.
because obviously I know there's legal reasons we can't speak about various things, like that's the way law is. But how where are you up to date at the moment? Because I know from you sent, was it a slap that you sent me, and there was like a document basically explaining where you are at the moment. So, but I think that was only up until March. So where are we at with regards to your case and what you can talk about and what the gym have said?
Okay, so with regard to the gym at David Lloyd's, I'm crowdfunding at Democracy 3, and there's a lot of information on the website there about my case and how it all, the conversations that I've had and the correspondence and things like that. Um, it it took a long time for me to receive a clear um, answer to the question, does our family membership include the prospect of our daughters being naked in front of or alongside naked adult men whilst in the female changing room? So I think the idea was really that people like me that ask awkward questions will get frustrated and just leave. That would be the common sense um, reaction. Just if you don't like it, just leave. But obviously, nothing ever changes if that continues to happen.
Mhm.
So I've decided that no, I'm not going to leave. It's not right, and families need to know what they're signing up for. If you want to be um, inclusive, why don't you put that on the advert, and then at least we know what we're signing up for. And if we don't want that, then we won't join. So with regard to the actual case, it takes a heck of a long time, and we're hoping at the end of this year, or perhaps early on into next year, we'll be um, going to trial and having our moment then.
Gosh, I mean, I think the thing that shocks me about it is something like that, and something with the books in the school, which we'll get onto in a minute, is that from what you're saying, you weren't told about it, neither opportunity. It wasn't like, okay, this is our policy, this is what we're going to abide by, and so on and so forth. Is that correct? That in neither case you just weren't told about it? Like one minute you went into both buildings, or you heard about it and like, oh, okay, like this is what's happening now.
So what's become apparent to me is that whilst we were all in lockdown and we were all at home, all the policies and guidance in schools, in private sector, public sector, it was all being changed, and which allowed then for people to self-identify into it. For example, at the leisure the health and leisure sector um, guidance is called. It's from written by UK Active, and they're supposed to be the industry leaders. And certainly during lockdown, when they were reopening the gyms and they were implementing all the new COVID cleaning processes, it's kind of been brought swept in along a lot underneath that as well. So a lot like the new normal.
Mm.
So that's where a lot of this has come from. But interestingly, Bannatyne gyms don't follow UK Active guidance. So it does show that it's a choice that service providers can make. They don't have to follow bad guidance.
And did they see, the thing with being inclusive is, and I say this to people all the time, it's not just about change, it's basically about having a shared set of values and discussing those and coming to some sort of agreement. Whereas, as you say, this all seems to be done under stealth. And even if you agreed or disagree with it, it's like the fact that it's under stealth is the one thing that gets me. It's
Yeah.
you just going just being underhand and whatnot. And especially with the books as well, which we're going to now. I mean, first of all, so you say it's primary school and secondary school that these books are being read to kids.
So in my experience, this was part of an academy trust. So it all fed on to the next level, and it was quite evident. It was quite easy to put the pieces of the puzzle together, where you can see at that early age that you're getting the drip drip feed of you might be a boy, you might be a girl, but you can choose, or you might be neither. So if you, and then they're also been taught to be tolerant. All forms of discrimination are wrong. So if you extend that further to an adult like yourself, Chris, if you decide that you're now a little girl, then that means that my little girls have to accept that you're also a little girl. And that means that you're entitled to follow them into the changing rooms and the toilets and things like that. So it works. Once you start confusing and blurring the lines, certainly from a child's perspective, it's a safeguarding issue, and it becomes very serious very quickly. And then at the secondary school, I actually could witness how that grooming is starting to take a hold of the older children, and lots of mental health struggles. And like I say, you could actually there were pupils that were identifying into the opposite sexes facilities, and the staff were very nervous about what the rules were. Can they say anything? Should they say anything? That sort of thing.
So who is it that schools will get their advice about with regards to books they're allowed to read like that in the curriculum?
Really,
Because surely that's very forget about sexuality, whether you're heterosexual, homosexual, but whatever you are, sexual orientation. It's just the explicitness of it as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
It's like at that age, who would decide actually 7 year olds need to be learning this?
Okay,
Who, which
yeah.
body?
So what we discovered is that the RSE and PSHE, sexual and I can't remember what it all stands for, but your sex education and your relationships education and all that sort of thing is all bundled together. And within the guidance from the Department of Education, schools are told in no uncertain terms that they have to have extreme caution when using external providers. Okay, so that is any external provider for anything that you bring into the school. You have to risk assess it. It's your school. Again, when you're a parent and you sign the registration to send your child to school, it's on the basis that they will risk assess and make sure that it's a suitable education, suitable according to their aptitude, age, ability, and that sort of thing. So these books also fall under that same rigorous risk assessment process, presumably, but that's not the case. So after raising you know, say these books are, you need to read them, you need to risk assess them. They're on your shelves for children aged 11, and they're extremely explicit. But like I say, because of the LGBTQ genre, the schools, certainly secondary schools, are or were being told that they had to include LGBTQ as part of the national curriculum. So if their book providers have a package of LGBTQ books, they trust their trusted book suppliers to have done due diligence and have bought the package from them, thinking, oh well, that's it, that's the end of it. Somebody somewhere's said that they're suitable for 14 plus young adults, but the schools are just putting them in the school library where, I mean, they're not suitable for 14-year-olds either. But they're literally being put on the shelf, and then, like I say, from 11 years onwards, you can just pick them up.
I'm sitting here stunned because obviously you hear stories like this, but it's not until you speak to someone who's gone through it personally that, yeah, I'm just stunned by the whole thing. And what, as you're talking, I was thinking that a lot of schools, not in the UK, I think are really clamping down on mobile phone use because
Yeah,
of what you can do. So if that's the case, if you're clamping down on mobile phones because of what you could potentially download
yeah.
or even record or film to record, then why would you not allow that, but then allow these kind of books? Not just the books themselves, but as you say, the links at the back. That seems very
They haven't
contradictory to me.
they haven't bothered to read them. They haven't done their due diligence. They haven't risk assessed the books. Um, I've got the book here actually, Chris, if you want me to show you it. It's I don't know if you can see there, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's certainly, the picture depicts a girl of maybe 12, 13, 14. You know, it's, you can see who they're aiming this at. And the chapter in particular, it's probably the wrong way around, but I asked if they wanted me to read from that chapter, and the safeguarding lead decided that it wasn't necessary. Um, but it's embarrassing to sit in a room with adults, let alone um, people that are entrusted to educate your children, defend that sort of material and compare it to challenging themes that you might get in books like Lord of the Flies and To Kill a Mockingbird, and it is like, are we looking at the same material? Are we, are you really trying to are you really trying to tell me that this is an educational resource?
Yeah. What happened to just letting kids be kids?
Well, there was another Brahma that came out during the meeting, that they were preparing children for the world we live in, which I found to be quite a telling term. That's obviously the world that they see, um, a highly sexualized world, and that's how it is, and that's what you get.
Okay. See, it's been quite a fair few years since I was in primary school and secondary school, and it's been, and I don't have any kids, and I'm just wondering. See, if you find like say a gay couple come and pick their child up, I imagine it's more certainly more common now than when it was when I was going. Okay, you might get some murmurings in the playground. I'm not denying that wouldn't happen, but I imagine after a while people will just get used to it and then just carry on their business, especially if you see them over and over again. It's like, okay, fine, whatever. But and then that's how people learn in many respects as well. But this, it seems like you're almost teaching kids something which they need to. First of all, it should be a parental thing. And I think one of the things taken away from sexuality at the moment that I have with schools is there seems to be, and I've discussed this in other podcast episodes, a lack of civic duty, where there's certain things that parents should be teaching themselves and they're not, and then the school are. I think that's an issue that needs to be discussed. But also, it's again, it's it's something that you'll learn as a adult as you grow up and you see things and you'll go to and says, "Oh, mum and dad, what's this and that and the other?" Um, but as you say, it seems to be like this. The school and other schools have seemed to decide to be the arbiter of what they should be experiencing from a relationship standpoint. I just, from that point of view, it's bizarre. Like when I was at secondary school, the only time we learned about anything like that in the class was probably done a little bit of relationship teaching, but more so with sex education, but that was from a biological standpoint.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just wondering, you say that the schools aren't doing it fairly. Since you've been on this, have people contacted you, say, other teachers, other heads of school, and said, actually, this is happening in my school now?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's absolutely rife. I I did freedom of information requests to every primary school in York and found that they were all using external providers for sex education. And they have names like Jigsaw and Mermaids and Scarf. Um, so they're all external providers, and that's how it's all crept in, and it's eroded the safeguarding of the schools, of the teachers, because they've been tricked into to using these external providers that are more often than not either working very closely with or with Stonewall. So that's how all the gender ideology is getting into the schools. And as far as books and in the library, yeah, it's the one that I the one that we got. It's not by no means one of the worst ones. There are some extremely graphic books out there that are also another comment that came out at the school was that it's just the same as going to the public library. It's no different to picking up a book in the public library. But again, this is a school, this is an education setting that parents are trusting that they will take out, due diligence to ensure that their materials are age appropriate. So it's not like a public library. Public in a public setting, again, it's the parents' responsibility. But once they're at school, it's the school's responsibility.
Yeah, I just find the whole
Oh,
thing
sorry.
weird.
I'll just go back to that point you made earlier on about the technology um, and the online links at the back of the book.
Mhm.
So another arm to the argument is that if you don't teach children about graphic um, masturbation and foreplay and all that sort of stuff, then they'll learn about it online, and that will be far worse. So we're going to do it. That's the reasoning behind teaching about sexual pleasure, sexual preferences. It boils down to that. Well, again, it's the world we live in, so they're going to learn it anyway. So we'll teach it. That's the argument from the schools.
Okay, but then surely in that case, wouldn't you A, encourage parents to make sure their kids don't use mobile phones in the first place? That's the first thing. And B, you'd put locks, teach if parents needed help, teach them to put locks on the content on the computer and what they can access on computers. You don't just say, well, you know what, um, they're gonna get it online anyway, so rather it come from us. I mean, it's not like back in the day where you may go a newsagent and there may be like certain magazines on the top shelf. Back then, you wouldn't say, "Well, the magazines are there, so we're going to teach them." And it's like, no, it's surely you teach them about teach about prevention in many respects. You don't teach them, okay, we'll expose you to all this. It just doesn't make any
No, no.
real sense to me. It's you teach your parents basically, okay, this is how you can block the content on the computer. We'll institute a mobile phone ban. Anyone who's using it is severe. Those are ways you do it. You don't just say, well, we'll just join in with the crowd. That just seems absolutely absurd to me.
Well, and also if you imagine that you're a teacher and you're teaching a classroom full of girls, what situation are you putting the teacher in? If it was you, Chris, that's a really, really dangerous um, scenario,
Mhm.
and not one that I would want to be. I wouldn't want to be that person in that classroom having those conversations with children. I'd be extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I don't gosh, time moves so fast. I mean, I was in secondary school in the 90s, and obviously, like I said, you had sex ed then, and you were taught from a biological standpoint, okay, this is how babies are made. Whereas now, like I say, it just seems so explicit. And actually, you talk about the websites and safeguarding. Have even the websites been safeguarded against, or have you not been told that?
No, they have no idea what's in their school library. I think they do now. I think they've gone through them now. But it again at the public library, it's quite an interesting one because after hearing that it's just the same at the public library, I thought I'd go down and have a look. So I don't know if you're aware of this, but certainly where I am, they were allowing once a child turned 11, again at the age of when you start secondary school, your child was able to obtain their own library card,
Hmm.
digital library card. Now, when we were kids, you used to have a restricted adults only section. There'd be certain books that you wouldn't be able to get out if you were under 18, under 16, or whatever the threshold was. But now, if you are 11 years old and you have your own library card, you have access to everything in the library, no restrictions. Now, I pulled out a few books at my local library, and the contents of these books included incest, rape, um, child sexual exploitation, the most serious and disturbing books that you can imagine. And they even have the technology to, it's not like you're saying to a librarian that she has to decide who takes what books, and it's digitalized, so they have the age of the child. They're fully aware that these are young children, and these books are they're able to take these books home unchecked. Again, it's another way of getting rid of boundaries and treating children as if they are adults, and even the phrase young adults in the legal sense, that's somebody who's aged between the ages of 18 and 25. When it comes to books, a young adult is somebody who is under the age of under the age of 18, certainly, but the 14-year-olds are classed
Mm,
as a young adult, which clearly, that's not the case by
no.
any measure.
Yeah, it's and actually, again, I was just thinking this. So you've got these books which you say are very explicit, which are being taught. Is there a difference in the way that they're allowing these books into the curriculum compared to something like English, where there's certain stories, like even say Shakespeare, where there's certain stories which are very bloody? Is there a difference between how they're choosing those books? Because again, there seems to be that contradiction between those, where they wouldn't allow something like that in like English curriculum.
That's interesting because, yes, there's lots of censorship about what's now acceptable, what's politically correct, and what you can have and what you can't have. Um, as far as the school goes, their argument to me was that they cover difficult themes, and this is just another difficult theme. So it's a case of, we don't want to censor books. We want children to have access to the full range of information, but just completely ignoring their obligation to provide age appropriate material. It's going back, harping back to what you said about being inclusive. No, that's not the answer, because if you are fully inclusive, that means including all the dangerous things as well, doesn't it? So you do need to have boundaries, and and even saying that all forms of discrimination is wrong, that's false too, because that would mean that you would allow people to commit all sorts of crimes if you didn't stop them. So, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, 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 yeah,
it's
yeah.
a free for all, but that doesn't make anybody any safer, does it?
No, no, and I just I'm not trying to laugh, but I'm having to because I almost feel like I'll cry in many respects because I'm just stunned. Like this is happening. Not just that this is happening, because in a way, the topic about sexuality has been going on for a few years, but more that nothing seems to have changed that much in many ways. Um, and yeah, it's just the whole thing's just bizarre in many respects. And to me, what's fascinating is the lack of safeguarding, the lack of safeguards there seems to be. I think that's the one thing that I take from this is there seems to be a lack of safeguards. Safeguards. It seems to be done via stealth.
Yeah.
And I don't know, has the school actually changed the way that they operate in that respect, or they're just carrying on as normal?
So, yeah, this kind of leads on to the SLAP suit.
Okay.
So I did discuss these issues with the BBC, and they contacted them for right of reply, and they decided to instruct solicitors to send letters to myself and the BBC demanding that we withdraw consent for the interview on account of defamation and malicious falsehood, which I didn't know at the time, but apparently this is called a slap suit,
Mhm.
to intimidate and silence critics. Um, but it worked. It did scare me receiving, a solicitor's letter talking about thousands and thousands of pounds in legal fees. Um, it did make me doubt myself, and I withdrew consent. But since having some legal advice from the BBC and the Free Speech Union,
Yeah, yeah,
we've decided that actually it's to yeah, everything I've said is true. We've and I can evidence it. I've got the paperwork. The claims that the things that I've seen have been removed from the interview, and the name of the school's been taken out of the interview. So that makes it much harder for them to bring a claim of defamation against me. But it also shows. I mean, I just googled slap suit on. I think it was on the government website gov.uk, and it says that it's usually the super wealthy who use these sorts of litigation to silence people. Bearing in mind this is a taxpayers funded school, they're using my money to send
mhm,
threatening letters to me to stop talking about what they're teaching my child. So yeah, there's not, even when I've spent 18 months before it's got to this stage, this hasn't been an overnight thing that I'm a particularly vicious woman. I gave the school a long, long time to try and put things in order. I was very understanding, sympathetic. It's not just you, it's schools across the country. Um, you know, really, really tried to lead them along, but they wouldn't listen. It was a case of we're doing it our way, and yeah, if you follow the complaints procedure and you end up sat with the board of governors and they still decide to keep a book with a chapter in,
yeah,
you really have nowhere else to go but to home educate, I'm afraid.
yeah, yeah. I just wonder. I mean, how long have so you just going back to your kids for a minute? So they're both being home educated at this current time.
Yeah.
How long have they been home educated for?
So the eldest has been home educated for 2 years, and the youngest just under a year.
Hmm. Okay. And I mean, I'm not trying to get you as an expert in home educating or anything like that on a spot, but what differences have you noticed in terms of the whole demeanor, what they're learning, like what major differences have you discovered or seen?
So, our eldest is absolutely loving the home education. So she spent a year at the school. So she got to the point where she was ready to try something else. It was a little bit more difficult for our youngest because she'd only been there 3 months, so she was still in that new school shoes, new bag, new friends, it was quite exciting. Um, so I was quite, cross that she'd been given this book within only 3, in that honeymoon period still. So it was a little bit harder for her to accept that actually, no, that they're not providing a suitable education, and we can't really trust them to do the right thing because they don't know what the right thing is anymore.
Mm.
But yeah, she loves horse riding, so she's getting plenty of horse riding lessons during the day when her friends would be at school, that sort of thing. So she's all right.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's good. With the government, do they have any guidelines with regards to what you can and can't teach with homeschooling?
So the criteria is that your child must be in a full-time education, and it can either be at school or education otherwise. So that phrase is important for anybody else who's interested in learning more about home education. Is education otherwise is a fantastic charity that provide all the guidance and template letters, all the legal requirements that need to be in place. So I would definitely recommend people go and check them out. But they were really helpful for me. So you have to provide a suitable education, a suitable. I think the words are suitable and efficient. So it's quite a broad definition of education with a nod towards reading, writing, and arithmetic. But
Mm.
apart from that, Chris, you really are free to educate your children the way that you see fit, and it's quite an eye opener once you step outside of the um, once you step outside, you realise, it's we are completely free to do what we want to do. We don't have to do exams, for example. We don't have to follow the national curriculum. Um, I think if more people realised how freeing it is, and obviously you can take trips whenever it suits you. You're not tied to any holidays or anything like that. So yeah, it's quite exciting really that you can follow your child's interests and push and push them as far as they can go.
So, yeah, I was going to, I mean, the reason I ask is because I'm known of people who've done home education, and I'm sure Ofsted have actually, I don't know if this is the case now because this was long time ago, but Ofsted actually had to come in and have a look around and see all that, and wondering if they're having to do that, do you have to have a curriculum that's for the home that's very similar to what's in schools? Yes, you might have a bit more flexibility, but is there certain things like with schools, like what we just discussed over the last few minutes? Do they want some semblance of that when you're at home educating as well?
So it depends on whereabouts you live, like your local education authority. It depends on the individuals who work at the local authorities as well. So people that are home educating do have varying experiences, and it depends how involved they are. I have been asked to submit a report of an intended syllabus, an outline of what we're going to be achieving. And again, all of this information is on education otherwise. And that's been it for me. So, once a year, I'm quite happy to submit a report saying that we're working on this. This is what we've been doing, and that's the end of it. But again, once you understand the what's legally required and how much control you have, it's a case of not feeling intimidated that you have to submit any evidence of work, that you have to let anybody into your house to look around at where you live. The all the information is there, and it really is a case of holding your own and being confident. And so they'll give you a form that you can fill in and answer their questions, but I decided I wanted to write my own report in my
Mhm.
own way, again, just to take back that element of control that I'm responsible for my child's education.
How easy is it to do home educate? And what I mean by that is, obviously, if you've is there factors such as money and, whether in single family household or if you're married, obviously, I take it those things make it very difficult in terms of whether you home educate or not. Because obviously, if I mean, I'm not going to ask you financial status; it's none of my business. But if you're, imagine if you're wealthier, it may be easier because you
Yeah,
have the time to actually do that. Would that be a fair assessment
yeah.
to say?
So, again, society's been organised in a way that makes it very, very difficult for you to step outside of the prescribed expectation, which is that you will send your child to school and you will go to work. That is the kind of normal situation for a lot of families, and certainly, like you say, if you're a single parent family, even more so. So yeah, there are additional costs, depending on how you want to teach, what you want to teach. So I've got a bit of a thing about online learning that I'm not happy to put them in front of a screen any more than they already are in front of one. I'd rather they were getting their hands dirty and learning physical skills in the real world. Um, it's a real opportunity for you to be creative and to think about how you can teach. Like I've got an allotment, that sort of thing. And woodwork skills, repairing fences, or doing a bit of craft work and things like that. So there's lots of ways to educate that doesn't cost a lot of money, but obviously it does involve one of you not having to go to work unless you can work flexi time and things like that. But what I would also recommend as a really useful option would be to pool your resources together. If there was a few of you, um, a few parents that can share the childcare, can share resources, and teach the children in a group setting, more like a play date sort of a situation. So there are ways to get around it.
We live in a world where qualifications are almost seen as king in regards to getting jobs and so on and so forth. So how do you adapt to that? Because you said earlier that with homeschooling, you don't have to do exams, but how does that translate to the real world where they want to see, oh, you've got this GCSE or A level or whatever question is, and yeah, you've had to do an exam around that. So how do they two correlate in regards to homeschooling and actually finding work? Just quickly before you answer, I know that the purpose of education isn't just to find a job. That's unfortunately the world we're living in at the moment. So, how do the two correlate in that regard?
Well, so my husband and I think the extent of our education, I went to college for a year and did an NVQ3. And my husband's a similar kind of education path. Neither of us went on to A levels or to do a degree or anything like that. And my husband is self-employed and runs his own business. So we have that confidence, I suppose, that there is an alternative way to make a living if you are able to focus on something, a passion, and you're able to work hard towards that passion to make yourself useful. Um, that there are employment opportunities, and obviously, as when you run your own business as well, you're also looking at people that you would want to employ, and something like a person with lots of qualifications who's lacking the social skills would we would rather have the person that we can see working, that we can work with,
Yeah.
who can who's ready to take on the challenge rather than somebody who's got qualifications. It's not. So I think there's more and more people like that are starting to realise that if every man and his dog's got a degree, maybe
Mhm.
that's not a measure of anything anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean,
And it
What
certainly puts you in a lot of debt as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially at university. I said to someone well, not even recently at the time, and I say to someone who's done a degree, um, but I did say to someone a long time ago that if you want to go university, I believe that anyone from any background should be given the opportunity to do so. But I don't think everyone should do a degree. And the person I spoke to that didn't quite understand what I meant, and I said because the thing with degrees back in the day was it was one of the reasons why degrees are so valuable was their rarity. It
Yes.
was so rare to do it
Yeah.
that um, that
Yeah.
you could get any managerial role with a degree because of the skills you were taught. Whereas now that's a lot harder because more people are doing them, so they want more something more specific in regards to the skills that you're taught, the one for your actual expertise. But as you say, in terms of business, oh, we need to do a degree. Well, what happened to working your way up from a business after leaving school and learning that way? And it's fascinating. I mean, like I said, I haven't got any kids, but if I did have kids, I would definitely want to homeschool them because, yeah, I'm just not, even before what you just said, I've not been happy with the curriculum at all. Just quickly, I did mention this before, Ofsted. Do you have to have Ofsted inspections as homeschooling or not? Or have I got that
No.
completely wrong? No,
No,
okay.
no. Just going back to the education thing, so our eldest is working towards GCSEs, so she wants to to certainly get to GCSEs, and then we'll again possibly go back into the system, 16, 17, um, for further education. So, we're keeping it flexible that nothing's completely off the table, but there are a lot of pitfalls that parents maybe they are aware, but they don't want to know. There is that if you don't think that you can change any your circumstances, you almost don't want to know that there's problems there. But hopefully, if there are any parents that are wondering, I hope that this might give them confidence to think perhaps we can. Um, that there are other options, and that you don't have to put up with it if you're really not happy.
Okay. Just quickly then, I know you kind of mentioned this already, but with the gym and with the school, where are we at the moment from a legal standpoint? We'll start with the gym first. So where are you at with the gym? Is that going to go to court as well, or what's going to happen there?
So yeah, thankfully, touch wood, I've only got the one legal case on the go at the moment, and that's David Lloyd's. I know, but it's a bit touch and go sometimes, to be honest, Chris.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really understand the legal process. It's all, I'm learning a heck of a lot myself. So my legal team are Branch Austin McCormick, and my lawyer is Elliot Hammer. So he's in charge of all of that. And like I say, it's a long process. So end of this year, perhaps early on um, in 2025, we'll start to make some headway there. But yeah, the process is ongoing. So yeah, we'll keep going with that one.
Okay, cool. Just quickly, you talked about the lockdowns we had before. Obviously, people had to homeschool then.
Yeah.
Surprised you that not enough parents stayed with homeschooling after all that ended?
Well, that was again a trigger point for me because it became extremely apparent that it was an absolute nightmare to do home schooling.
Mhm.
So this was thrust upon us last minute. We weren't prepared. A lot of us didn't have any employment. We couldn't earn a living. We were all squashed in one place at the same time. Complete chaos. So yeah, people thought it was horrendous and couldn't wait to get their children back to school. So I think that was another part of the agenda, to be honest with you, that it would scare people off from home education. So I'm very careful of calling it home education, not homeschooling, because it's anything but school. It's got nothing to do with school. It's the polar opposite of homeschooling. So from our experience, when lockdown was going on, we didn't do any of it. I contacted the school and said, no, the children are not happy to go online and do the online learning. So we're not going to do it. We're going to learn our own way. and we're going to go outside, and we're going to go in the garden, and we're going to go for walks, and we're going to do it that way. And again, you know, I came up against quite a lot of pushback from the school because they weren't able to tick their boxes anymore, and that was a problem for them. And it didn't matter that this was better for me and my children. Their priority was to tick the boxes.
Mhm.
And that is school in a nutshell. You know, it's not about your children, it's not about your family. It's about conforming and making it easier for the school. So yeah, that was my takeaway, that actually I know what's best for mine. Thank you very much.
You were very defiant in that, and good on you for being so. But with the climate that we were in at that time, did anyone actually try and call the police and say, "What are those kids doing in the garden? Why are they outside?" Because I know I've heard of cases where that happened. So we had a lot of that with your yourself and your kids.
I got a lot of looks that people didn't like, that, you know, we were having fun. Um, but yeah, it was a case of, I I know what's right for me. I know how children need to have fun and fresh air, and play. So yeah, I don't know why it just didn't really. I wouldn't tell other parents what to do if their children were happy, for example, to sit in front of a computer. Many are quite happy to sit in front of a computer and learn online. Just didn't work for us, so we didn't.
Oh gosh, okay. I mean, it's been a pleasure talking to you. It's definitely been an eye opener for sure. In regards to your case, if anyone wants any more information on basically what happened and what's happening, where can they go to?
So I'm on X, and I'm Emma Hardy, and some numbers after my name, but you'll find me on X. That's the only place I'm on. And the crowdfunder is on. If you want to read more about the case and the conversations that I've had with David Lloyd's, that's on Democracy 3.
Okay, cool. What we'll do is I'll leave a link to those in the description below. Emma Hardy, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on to the 286 project.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thanks for having me.